Welcome to 5 Fast Facts presented by Chick-fil-A. I'm Sami Kincaid, and this is Marc Daniels. Marc, second road game. We're at Pitt. What have you been studying up for this matchup?
Well, Sammy, this is a school that's been around a long time. 1787 is when Pitt was first formed. It was then known as the Western University of Pennsylvania before they would later change their name to Pitt.
And a long history. This is probably, I think, the coolest fact that you came up with.
Yeah, Pop Warner, the Pop Warner. He was once the head coach at Pitt. How far back their history goes, in the early 1900s, Pitt last won a national championship in 1976. Johnny Majors was the coach. Tony Dorsett was on that team, and some of the most famous alums out of that team, Dorsett, Hugh Green, and of course the great Dan Marino was on that Pitt program years ago.
And that's a lot of big names in history, but what's the history between Pitt and UCF?
Well, the Knights and Panthers have a history. Back in 2006, Pitt came for a Friday night game with a Citrus Bowl, lopsided game the Panthers won. And of course, Knight fans remember last year's game here at Spectrum Stadium. UCF jumped early and often on Pitt and got the victory there. So here's the third game of the series, but the first time we're going to play up in Pennsylvania.
And cool, I think this is pretty cool because UCF's QB Dillon, he had 347 yards of passing, and Pitt's starting QB was about the same.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett's really good. Knight fans saw him last year, and he had a lot of success against Penn State throwing the football. They didn't get in the end zone much, but between the 20s, he was really effective. It's important to get pressure on him. When he had time to throw last week, he was very effective. That Knight defensive front's going to want to get a lot of pressure on him.
And Pitt's defense, they're also really good.
Yeah, their front four had a lot of pressure last week against the Penn State quarterback, and they typically like to just trust those four to rush. So the offensive line for UCF, whoever's at quarterback, he's doing a good job protecting, as they did against Stanford last week, to allow the Knight quarterbacks to find success with the wide receivers downfield. But Pitt will usually just rush four, and they're very, very good up front.
Well, thank you for telling us what you've been studying for this matchup, and we'll see you next week whenever we cover UConn.